Hi, this is John Grant with the REI Policy Institute. REI Policy Institute is funded by Randy Patrick, who's an investor in Tampa. And primarily what I do is lobby for better laws and regulations governing distressed properties. If you want to learn more about us, reipolicy.com. On that site, you can subscribe to our newsletter, and you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is where all these videos are found. And you can also check us out on Facebook as well. For this week, Randy wanted me to do kind of an overview of how the election may impact the industry. So I'm glad to do that. I thought I would start with the current state of housing policy. Generally we see very little congressional impact on housing policy right now. Mostly it's FHFA, HUD, FHA, who are kind of determining what's going on in terms of the government's policy on housing. That should concern people a bit, even though these agencies have the authority to do it. But the fact is, you kind of want elected officials to have a strong say in how in any policy arena. Generally, when we look at current policy, we see a lot of government involvement in terms of mods, refis, and more recently we've seen a surge in support for principal reductions as well. So generally it is a policy that wants to keep people in their homes. I feel it tends to ignore certain realities. Ultimately, look, if someone really doesn't have the income and never should have gotten the loan in the first place, keeping them in their home, you're not giving them this asset that they have. You're just taking a debt and hanging it around their neck, and it drags them down. So I think fundamentally, I think while these programs are well intentioned, there's a concern about whether or not they actually work and whether or not they're really the best thing. The redefault rates for a lot of them are very high. So that's more or less where we are right now. The other elephant in the room is what to do with Fannie and Freddie. This is something I got wrong. I felt that once Dodd-Frank was done, and in the House we had the House Financial Services Committee had a bill that it got out of committee but couldn't go any further. On the Senate side, you had the Corker-Warner bill, which I thought was going to be the winner. Seemed like a pretty decent compromise, but they couldn't get it done. So right now, Fannie and Freddie are up in the air. Now let's take each side. Starting with the Democratic ticket, it's important to note Governor Kane is a housing advocate attorney. I actually worked with him many years ago. There was these foreclosure consultant bills going on in the states, and some of them were problematic for the residential real estate investing community. So we had been working in some states mostly to stop the bills, but we saw an opportunity in Virginia to work with consumer groups and to work with elected officials to get a model bill done. We did get a model bill done there that worked both for the consumer groups and protected the industry. That was a nice win. Governor Kane was, back when he was governor of Virginia, he was the one who actually signed that bill at a signing ceremony that some of the folks were at. So it was a good day for the industry. But I think that's one relevant issue to remember. So I think, and if you look at what the platform is going to say, I think housing discrimination, amendments and changes to the Fair Housing Act will be a big ticket item. Affordable housing is, I track a lot of issues in the States for my Wall Street clients. And affordable housing is a big ticket issue around the country. I would imagine that with the Democratic administration, we'll see more of an emphasis on that, and in particular, since Senator Kaine would be a part of it. There's also talk about reforming kind of how credit scores are done to be a little more favorable to lower and mid-income folks. I generally think we'll see an expansion of the existing programs, or at least they'll be preserved in terms of the loan mods, the refis, and the principal reductions as well. I think that a Clinton-Kaine administration probably would remain committed to that, to these programs that are in place. And the question, are they good or bad for investors? I think they kind of delay the inevitable. But if it's a situation where the government really won't let go of it, and really keeps pushing these programs, I wonder over time if it does have a negative impact on the industry. Finally, one comment I would say, Elizabeth Warren, the senator from Massachusetts, made a comment about the Republican nominee, saying that he cheered on the housing crisis so he could swoop in and take people's homes. Look, the fact is, it represents a philosophy that ignores markets entirely, and basically believes if someone is in a disadvantageous position and you remedy that and make money remedying that, you're a bad person. That's more or less drilling down to what her argument is. The woman, she hates money. She hates certain people who make money, not other people who make money. I'm not making a political statement here in terms of who anyone should vote for, but she has been involved with the CFPB, and the reason why I bring this statement up is that if she would be much more powerful in the Senate under a Clinton-Kaine administration, and I think what would concern me is that if she decided to steer the CFPB toward taking a look at our industry, that would concern me, because this industry does not have the organization and to really take on anything if the CFPB made a true run at it. And I think most of the lobbying efforts is like the one I'm doing is just a small one, funded by one person. So the industry, I think, would be tough for them. I think if the CFPB went after that, but I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But I doubt it. I think it was probably more just political talk, but it shouldn't be ignored. On the Republican side, obviously, with Trump, you have someone who, on the face, would be sympathetic to the industry, certainly. He would also appoint new folks at these agencies that I talked about that have a massive amount of control over housing policy. So one would think things would get better. The only caveat is that Trump tends to distinguish between his policies and beliefs as a private citizen versus those as he runs for office. And I think there's been a couple of examples of that in the campaign. But the candidate himself has been relatively silent on housing policy. I think that's probably smart given the Trump University stuff that he's facing. I think it would kind of look bad. Now, if you look at the Republican platform, I think there were a couple good things in there. One thing that I saw that stood out, a lot of people who buy, rent, and sell properties often complain about EPA regulations. And there is something in the platform that talks about reducing the burden on people who want to buy, sell, and rent properties, the regulatory burden in terms of environmental regulations. I think that would be a big help to the industry. Otherwise, the general theory there in terms of the Republicans, is basically reducing taxpayer risk. The Republican Party generally saw the housing crisis and the Fannie and Freddie issue as, through the lens of taxpayer exposure. So they're absolutely working on, and have been in Congress working on, a new housing finance system. Whether or not that can ultimately get done, even if Trump is elected president, is yet to be seen. The concern there is you're going to have to protect the 30-year fix. There's no way around that politically. And I think it's just hard to reach deals on anything, even within the same party, especially on something as broad as a housing reform would be. Hopefully, in terms of a strategy to get things done, we'd see things taken in a more piecemeal fashion. Sort of like what I talked about in a prior video when I talked about these articles about, repealing Dodd-Frank. And my thought being, there's no way in one bill they're just going to strike that large of a law. It's just not going to happen. The thing got done during a crisis, and when you unwind something like that, if you were to do it, you sort of take it in sections generally. But more or less, that's where we are in terms of reforming Fannie and Freddie. I think the Republicans would, look at it more toward reforming the housing, finance system and protecting taxpayers. I don't know if the Democratic side, if Fannie and Freddie reform would really be a big ticket item at all. I think it would. I don't know if there'd be any changes there really. So that's where we are. I want to say that this is not a recommendation to vote for one side or the other. My personal politics aren't relevant to my job or to these videos that we put out. We just want to be informative. And basically what I did here is just share with you what is in the party platforms and a little bit of the history with the Senator Kaine, former Governor Kaine. And then the Warren comment, I think is potentially relevant as well. So anyway, that's it for this week. That's a bit of a roundup. We'll probably get more into the weeds once the election kicks into high gear. But I wanted to, and Randy wanted to give everyone kind of an initial preview. And that's where we're at. Again, reipolicy.com. You can subscribe to our newsletter to get some great information and support the efforts that Randy and I are doing to protect distressed property investors. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel from that page as well. Okay, thanks a lot. I'll see you next week.